my name's Julie, and I just moved to Serbia 2 weeks ago from Colorado in the United States.
Julie, how did you meet Christ and how did he change your life?
I met Christ when I was really young. I grew up in a Christian family, and we went to church every Sunday. At one point, when I was 4 years old, I wanted to go to heaven, and so I asked my dad to help pray with me, and I asked the Lord into my heart. I was really young, so I'm not sure if I really knew what I was doing at the time, but I can honestly say that my whole life I've desired to know Christ more, and he's been a big part in my life. I went to a camp once when I was 10 years old and recommitted my life to Christ then because I was older and I knew what I was doing, and again, didn't want to go to hell, so I was like, God save me. And I believe that was probably the most sincere moment where Christ entered my life. And the big reason why is beyond that point, life got a lot harder. In my family, there was a lot of fighting and arguing and disagreements. And I grew up with 3 other siblings. And my role was the peacemaker. And often I would be my parents' counselor too. So while they were fighting, I was often going into my room, hiding and reading the Bible. And God always met me there with peace, and through prayer, I was able to just trust in him. So I think that was even though it was a hard time in my life, it was really special because I got to, Christ came and met me, and I kind of saw him as a father figure. But I also kind of had a very immature idea of who he was at the time. So a lot of my prayer was about him fixing things that my parents were fighting about, or making my life better, or helping me get straight A's, or helping me get through life. I kind of asked him for things like God is a genie, and not I just kind of wanted stuff from him and maybe didn't desire the relationship as much. So as I continued through school, my hope was that he was going to send me far away so I could escape my family and go somewhere like California, or go to school at some Christian school where I can make friends with Christians. And I just thought that was the right thing to desire, get good grades so I can go to a really prestigious school where there were many Christians. And God didn't give me that at all, because I'm really bad at school and I usually fail all of my exams historically. So because of that, I wasn't able to go to these prestigious Christian schools. I had to stay in my hometown and go to the local university there. And I felt like God was my enemy. He wasn't there to rescue me or save me. He wasn't going to do what I wanted him to do. And so I even considered walking away from the faith when I was in college, because I don't know, I thought maybe I was just raised to believe in God and didn't have a real relationship with him. But pretty quickly on, my freshman year, I wasn't going to church and my life was just going downhill. Wasn't making good friends, wasn't getting into good relationships, was making a lot of poor decisions, and was doing really poorly in school as well. So I started to go to church again, and went to this college church. And in that church, I made a really great community of Christians. And through that, just discovered worship for the first time and discovered God's church for the first time. Being able to have really great Christian friends that taught me about evangelism and living my life for Jesus, that really changed me a lot. So God met me in college through that. It was in college where I ended up meeting my husband at this church. He wasn't my husband at the time. I just met him at a party, and it was a pretty quick passing in the moment, but he was the first guy I'd ever met whose life was radically changed by God, was not believing in who he was, and then God came and changed him completely. And I had never met a guy like that who loved Jesus so much. And So I was very attracted to him, but he went to war, so I wasn't able to stay in relationship with him. So we broke up for 2 years, and during that time, I actually got into another relationship that was pretty unhealthy, and the guy was not a Christian, and I kind of thought it wasn't a big deal because I came from a family where my parents were Christians, and they had a really rough marriage. So marrying a Christian doesn't promise a good marriage. So why marry a Christian in the first place? So I continued on this relationship with this guy who wasn't a believer. And it just became apparent over the year that our lives were going in different directions. We liked to do the same things, but for totally different reasons. We both loved people, but he loved what he could get from people, and I really loved like getting to know people and watching God change their life. And so because we didn't have the same desires, it just wasn't working out. So by the end of college, I was finishing school. I realized I needed to get out of this unhealthy relationship. By the time I called it quits, God brought Micah back into my life, literally the same week. We were able to reconnect, and by that point, my now husband, was thinking about pursuing ministry, and I, meanwhile, was not ever thinking about doing that. I didn't want to marry a pastor. It just wasn't something that I ever saw myself doing. I liked to party and I liked to drink, and I felt like if I became a pastor's wife, I couldn't have fun anymore. So I was going to, but I really loved this guy, and I also knew that my reasons for not being with him were sinful. So we gave it a try again, we dated again, and just through that season, God really changed me and changed my desires. And I was able to wrestle with what it would look like to recommit my life to Christ and totally surrender it for the gospel and go wherever Micah wants to go to share the hope of Christ. So when I broke up with my boyfriend at the time and got back with Micah, I recommitted my life to Christ because I was tired of living life my own way. And I just wanted to see what God could do with it if I just gave it to him. And ever since I made that decision, he has just taken me on the craziest adventure. It's definitely, I would never change it ever. I would choose God again and again every day. So marriage has been great. We made a really big decision that we were going to move to Serbia, and that has been a dream of mine, just to get out and do new things and just see how God can change people in places I didn't expect. So that's why I'm here, and that's my story.
Julie, what advice would you give to the younger generation?
I think what I have seen the most is people are scared to read the Bible, and we hear about God through our professors. We hear about God through TV. And so we think that we know who God is, and we make that decision on our own about whether we want him in our life or not. And the truth is, like, those are, where you need to go to learn about God is the Bible. And the moment you can open up the Word and look for him for yourself is where truth really is. So my encouragement for the young generation would be to not be afraid of the Bible and to just open it up with a friend if you want and just see what it has to say, because it's hard to sum up something that has been written over thousands of generations by multiple authors. So it's better just to go in and discover him on your own.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing your story with us. Ljudi, hvala vam što ste gledali ovaj video. Nadam se da vas je ohrabrila Julina priča i nadam se da vas je podstakla na neko razmišljanje o životu, o vašoj budućnosti, o planu koji Bog ima za vaš život i koji je namenio za vaš život, a to je život pun blagoslova, ali kako i duhovnih, tako i svih ostalih aspekata u životu. Ohrabrio bih vas i ja da uvijek budete otvorenih srca i misli prema Bogu i prema ljudima koji su oko vas, da uvijek čujete nešto novo, što je pozitivno, što je dobro. I ako vam se sviđa video, bacite like, subscribeujte se na naš kanal i podelite ako vam se sviđa. To je to. Zapratite nas na Instagramu, profil se zove Životna puzla, tako da bacite follow i vidimo se u narednom videu. Ćao!